Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Concepts. My name is Joshua Bumpus. I'm the marketing project manager here at Rob Roy. This is the third Coffee and Concepts that we've held for our Rob Roy Raceway products. First for Plasti-Bond, and we're so glad that you guys could join us today. Our topic is PVC-Coated Raceway Transitions and Innovations, and today's content is being hosted by Jack King. He is extremely knowledgeable about all of these innovations about PVC-coated raceways, and so we're looking forward to gleaning some great information from him this morning. Um, with that being said, I hope everyone has their favorite cup of coffee to sit back and relax. I've got some iced coffee today because it's still feeling like summer over here. But I will now bring Jack up and we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Josh, and good morning, everybody. As Josh mentioned, my name is Jack King, and I'll be your host for this morning's session. And as Josh mentioned, this is actually our third session. So for those of you that have attended one of the ones in the past, welcome back. We're glad you're back. And if this is your first time attending, well, thank you for joining, and we're very happy you're here this morning. So the format that we're going to use this morning is pretty simple and straightforward. We're scheduled to be together for about 30 minutes. So I'll spend probably 15 or 20 minutes or so reviewing some content, and that'll leave us some time at the end to have any questions or comments that we can have open dialogue. And so as we go through the session, if you have any questions or comments, you just drop those into the chat or the comments, and we'll make sure we get those addressed at the end. And so before we get into the agenda part of the session, I do want to just take a minute as a means of introduction, or if you've attended before, reintroduction, a little bit about Rob Roy Industries and a little bit about who Rob Roy Industries is. So specifically, Rob Roy is a 115-year-old, fourth generation privately held company headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have manufacturing facilities in both the state of Michigan as well as multiple facilities in the state of Texas. And when people think about Rob Roy, most people think about PVC coated raceways and they think about fiberglass enclosures. And that makes perfect sense because those are businesses that Rob Roy's been in for more than half of a century. But when you actually look at the Rob Roy brands, there's more. There's actually much, much more. And if you look at this slide, and I'm going to actually start on the upper right-hand side, one of the brands is our ECN Corns business, and that is elbows, couplings, and nipples, as well as the original corn clamps, which are right angle, parallel, and edge clamps that are used in the support of Conduit. Below that, there is the Attabox brand, and the Attabox is a complete offering of polycarbonate enclosures that complement the Stalen fiberglass offering. And when you put those two together, they offer one of the most complete non-metallic offerings that offer proven protection in demanding applications. And then if you move to the left-hand side of the screen, on the bottom part, you'll see two of our newest brands and some of our most innovative. Rob Roy Stainless is a brand of two complete offerings of stainless steel conduit and fittings. There's an industrial grade and a food grade. So the difference in those products is your industrial grade is going to be used in applications where you have corrosion, and stainless is a preferred material, where you're going to have environmental considerations. And so some of those things may be chemical facilities, refineries, offshore platforms. But the food grade version, very similar to that, where corrosion's an issue and you need environmental conditions, but also what we're primarily targeting there are those facilities that actually compliance with hygienic principles is required. And those are oftentimes regulated facilities. And when we talk about regulated facilities, we're talking about USDA or FDA. So those are typically going to be your food and beverage facilities, your pharmaceuticals, those types of things where they actually have government compliance according to hygienic principles. And then the one at the bottom is Rocket Rack. And Rocket Rack is the first support platform for electrical raceway and mechanical infrastructure specifically designed for use in applications where strength, flexibility, and compliance with hygienic principles is also required. And then at the top, you see our PVC coated brands. And as I mentioned before, Rob Roy's been producing PVC coated products for well over 50 years, but it remains a really important and vibrant part of Raceway System Solutions in those applications where corrosion is a concern. And really, that's the topic of today's session. We're going to talk a little bit about PVC-coated electrical raceways. We're going to talk a little bit about PVC coating and why it's often the preferred choice in those corrosive applications. And then we're going to talk specifically about transitions and terminations and how, if they're not properly designed and installed, they can potentially be a weak link in that overall system installation. So as we get into the agenda, this is how we're going to approach it today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit of background information. We're going to talk just briefly about the significant impact corrosion has. And then we're also going to talk about why PVC-coated products are often the preferred choice to mitigate some of that potential impact. And then we'll talk about Plasti-Bond system of products, and specifically the 3 requirements that you need to look for to ensure that you get a fully protected raceway system. And in the bulk of the session this morning, we're going to talk about transitions and terminations and how they can be weak links. And when we get into those, we're actually going to try and follow a consistent methodology, if you will. In those innovations and transitions, what we're going to talk about is a little bit about what the innovation is, specifically what the product is and how it's constructed at a high level. Then we'll talk a little bit about where and how you would use it. And then we'll tie it all together and talk about specifically how that innovation can help improve the overall installation of the system. So corrosion, as I mentioned before, it's a big deal. In fact, it's a really big deal. The cost of corrosion, as you can see here on the slide, in 2023 is estimated at $3.4 trillion. And that's a huge number, obviously, but also just to kind of give you another sense of scale of exactly how big and impactful that number is. That $3.4 trillion is about the equivalent of 3.4% of global GDP. So it's a significant financial impact around the world. But a couple other things that are often overlooked that also have a big impact is when you actually look at it and you have a situation where you have an electrical raceway system and there's a failure. Industry studies have shown that when you have to replace that electrical infrastructure system, the cost of replacing that can be up to 10 times the original cost of that installation. And one of the other things that makes corrosion a little bit tricky is to keep in mind is that when you look at this thing, when it comes to corrosion protection, there is no universal remedy. So when you look at that, part of the selection process has to be, how do I determine a methodology to give myself the longest life and the value that I want in my installation? So when you look at that, here is a simple chart that helps you understand why PVC coated products are often selected and used. So if you look at this chart, you can see down below, this is actually a pH chart. And if you look at the chart, as you go through it, it actually shows some common materials on the scale, and it shows those areas where they perform well. And so proper material selection can be your first line of a primary defense. And as you look at this chart, as you move from the left and acidic to right to basic, you'll see in the middle, somewhere around 7, it's marked as water, and then that's marked as a neutral. And really, in all practicality, in most applications, anything from really almost a 5 to an 8 is considered the neutral range. And when we do other sessions, when we do accredited lunch and learns at Corrosion College, we spend a lot more time on the material science and how they relate to these things. But in this case, for the purposes of this morning's talk, the real key thing here to take away is that if you look at this chart at the bottom, you'll see that PVC coated has the broadest applicability for corrosion resistance across the whole pH scale. So that's one of the big reasons why PVC coated is chosen, just a wide range of suitability. A couple of the other reasons why PVC coated products are used is, unlike some materials, there are products that sometimes have a limited offering. With PVC coated products, there's a complete range of products available so that you can go through and do a complete system installation. And thirdly, one of the big reasons why it's used, and probably one of the key reasons why PVC coated is used, is it actually has a very long and proven history of quality and performance in demanding environments. And that performance is supported by independent third-party certification, whether they be UL, ETL, or other accredited agencies. And so that's not only testing, but also evidence through ongoing compliance review of the facilities. So let's talk about the PVC coated systems and specifically what you have to have in order to ensure you've got a well-protected system. Really, you got to have three things. You have to have well-protected joints, you have to have an effective seal, and you have to have an effective coating. When you talk about well-protected joints, what we're really talking about there is and commonly viewed as sealing sleeves. So sealing sleeves are pretty typical on almost all PVC coated fittings, and they help seal out the system by providing an overlap at the point in which the male threads go into a female thread. So that overlap helps seal out the system and give you protection. When you talk about an environmental seal, what we're typically talking about here are environmental requirements. So in environments where PVC coated is used, environments like food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, water, wastewater, refinery, transportation, all those types of applications have requirements for products that will survive in high corrosion, but also have appropriate environmental protection. And that combination of water or chemicals or dust or high pressures or temperatures, they can all be fatal to an electrical system if they're not properly protected. So the key here is making sure that you've got a system that has the environmental accreditation aligned with what the requirements of that installation are. And the third thing we talk about is an effective coating. And this is probably the most important one. And when you're talking about effective coating, what we're really talking about is proper adhesion. So proper adhesion is the key to corrosion resistance for the Conduit Raceway system. And it's critical that the PVC coating adheres firmly to the substrate for performance in those corrosive environments. So with that, let's take a look as we start to get into the electrical raceway system. Any place where you have an exposed thread are places where dirt and chemicals and bacteria can accumulate and grow, and it can lead to something that's called crevice corrosion. And so when you look at that in normal design of a product, when you ring up MPT threads of conduit into a female thread, it is traditionally you will get a point where you will have exposed threads. So when you look at those installations, it becomes really clear that any place where you have connections or terminations can potentially become a weak link in the installation, and why it's so critical that when you look at the design and install the product as a system, and that's how you got to look at it as a system, not just individual parts. It's so important to take into account those connections, those transition points. And that's regardless of the type of product material that you use. So with that, let's just take a look and we'll jump in and talk about some of the innovations and how they can help you improve your overall installation. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a sealing lock nut. And the patented sealing lock nut is really a very simple product in design. It's a lock nut, but what it has is that built-in sealing sleeve that we talked about earlier that actually is designed to fit around the OD of the mating conduit to seal off that area of which the connection is made. And then also at the face of it, it's actually got a built-in integral gasket. And that gives a seal to help prevent waters or oils or ingress and getting inside that. So it's a simple product, patented product. It's available in 1/2 through 6-inch trade sizes to align with specific applications. So the place that you are going to use it, some of the most common places, if you have a box or an enclosure that maybe can't be PVC coated, common examples of that may be if you have a fire alarm box as a threaded entry, that typically is not going to be coated, and you're going to run conduit in there, you're going to end up with exposed threads. You could have the same situation with an emergency stop base station in your facility. Another common application may be running flexible conduit, like an ECGJH type of conduit, into a motor for vibration purposes. And again, that motor typically is not going to have a sealing sleeve. But probably the single biggest use of the most common application is what you see in the picture down on the left. And that's actually in situations where you're making a transition from below grade to above grade. So oftentimes it's required that below grade, you're going to use PVC coated for its performance below. And then once they get above grade, they transition to Schedule 40 PVC. And if you look in the top picture, you'll see what normally would happen. What I talked about is when you make that connection, you end up with exposed threads. With a sealing lock nut in the bottom picture on the left, you can see the resultant. So you actually have that built-in gasket I talked about sealing against the PVC coupling. And on the right, you have the sealing sleeve so that you're maintaining the integrity of the system and you're covering all the threads so that you don't have any risk of corrosion at that location. How does that make it better? Exactly that. It seals the threads and it gives you environmental protection. The second one we want to talk about is innovation is called the SpeedCouple. And the PVC coated SpeedCouple, which is available in trade sizes 2 through 6, is an innovative coupling with an internal swivel ring that allows you to connect two pieces of conduit or conduit and elbow without having to turn the conduit. And you improve the installation and significantly improve the worker safety associated with that. Where are you going to use it? So typically you're going to see it again underground. You're going to see a lot in trenches where it's below grade. PVC SpeedCouple is UL approved as a direct barrel of use. So again, as you're coming from a transition from or connecting conduits below grade or in transitioning out. The other place that you'll see a lot of that is actually in situations where you have a physical space constraint, where there's just not a lot of space to be able to get in and move that up, turn that other piece of conduit. And you actually see that in the picture on right. That's actually a facility that had a very narrow space. And so the SpeedCouple gave the ability to install the conduit without having to turn the secondary piece. So how does it make the installation better? Well, there's a number of ways. So first of all, I mentioned the fact that it's suitable for direct burial. So you've got peace of mind as far as the application and compliance with what the standards were. The stainless steel locking screw gets it in the desired position. So you got good connection, which helps maintain the ground continuity as required and recognized by the NEC in Article 344. And one of the other key points about this is when you think about PVC coated products, a traditional three-piece coupling or an Erickson is not readily available because of the construction that you just can't coat that and still have it formed properly. So historically, in a situation where you needed a three-piece coupling PVC coated, you would ended up using an explosion-proof union, a UNF or UNY style of product. But that product is actually 3 to 4 times, because it's explosion proof, more expensive than a SpeedCouple. So in this case, this particular product gives you the ability to make that connection, eliminate the need to handle heavy conduit and turn heavy conduit, be able to make that connection, maintain that ground savings, safer for your workers, and also offer significant material savings. A common place where you see transition is when you're going from rigid conduit to liquid tight flexible metallic conduit. And here in this picture, what you can see is you actually have what is our LTR fitting. So the LTR fitting is a specially fitting, purposely designed and built for use when transitioning from coated rigid conduit to liquid tight flexible metallic. The unique design of this product actually combines the functionality of liquid tight fitting, which you see on the left, for terminating the liquid tight conduit, with a coupling for connection to the rigid conduit. So where are you going to use it? Anywhere you have a situation where normally you're using rigid conduit for mechanical protection, and you're transitioning to liquid type flexible metallic conduit. Typically that's in a couple areas. That could be in an area where you have space concerns and you literally just can't feasibly bend the rigid conduit, or possibly in situations where you actually have some flexibility needs because of vibration. So the way that it makes it better is it actually goes through, and as you see on the right, you eliminate that gap, and it provides a tight connection over the rigid conduit with the sealing sleeve, and then eliminates the exposed threads at the liquid tight fitting to eliminate any risk of corrosion at that location, as well as maintaining system integrity. So the transition from rigid conduit to liquid tight flexible conduit is common. We talked about that in situation directly, but there's often times where that transition is made through a rigid conduit body. So in this case, you would have rigid conduit going into a conduit body and then connecting through that conduit body to liquid tight flexible metallic conduit. So in this case, the solution to this is actually an innovative product that is actually in the accessory that's provided with a liquid tight fitting. So the PVC coated liquid tight transition adapter, and you can see that on the right, is actually a gasket made of UL recognized PVC material that's used in the coating process. It's a known material. It matches the coating, so aesthetically it aligns and it matches for a pleasing and professional appearance. But what it does, it gives you the ability to directly mount the liquid tight conduit fitting into the PVC coated conduit body to maintain the system integrity. So again, the big thing here, when you look at it from a product standpoint, it's provided free of charge in all liquid tight fittings from 1/2 through 2-inch. So when you talk about liquid tight fittings, that's all configurations, straight, 45 and 90 configurations, with or without a grounding lug, and it's also in the steel or the aluminum versions. So again, where are you going to use this in those applications? Possibly in an area where you've got the need to be able to seal. Maybe you've got a proc switch near a conveyor, and you're going to liquid tight conduit for flexibility, or you need it for environmental ratings to be able to seal that out, keep oils or waters or coolants or those other types of things excluded. So oftentimes you'll see motors or pumps or any type of processing equipment. So again, how does it help the overall system? When you look at it again, as you install the PVC adapter over the conduit body where the sealing sleeve's been removed, it actually gives you a point where you can maintain the overall integrity, gives you the ability to get the full 3.5 threads engagement of liquid tight fitting into the conduit, female conduit entry, as recommended by NEMA design standards. And it also gives you the capability to terminate, and you can do it all without having additional components that you have to purchase. So it saves material costs, saves labor costs, and it actually reduces the space required for the installation itself. Reducing tray size is another place that oftentimes is a pain point. So when you look at this, the reducing bushing is actually our innovation here is reducing bushing with a sealing sleeve. And this is a patent pending product that actually takes and uses the sealing sleeve that we talked about earlier. And it's simple and important, but it actually takes a reducing bushing, creates a better installation by maintaining the environmental rating of the system by incorporating the sealing sleeves at the connection points. It's available in the 15 different configurations from 1/2 through 2-inch, and so that you have the ability to go through and pick a product that aligns with your specific installation. How does it work? The most common occurrence is when you look at different installations in an industrial facility, it is very common that you have different trade sizes of PVC coated conduit to align with either different ampacity requirements or load ratings. And so ultimately you have different size conduits in there, but almost invariably at some point becomes a point where you need to actually connect those. So the way that this actually does, it gives you the capability to give you a design installation and have it fit and eliminate some of the things that you see in the picture. So the picture on the left, you'll see a very common occurrence is that you end up with a gap where it contaminates water and ingress can become a point. On the middle photo, you'll actually see what they've done is they've removed the sealing sleeve in order to get a reducing bushing in. In the photo on the right, what you see is you actually have the reducing bushing fully engaged at the point, and then a connection with a sealing sleeve over the top over the OD of the conduit body or of the conduit making the termination. So the design's simple, it improves the system integrity, and it helps in transitioning from one trade size to the other. And it's also important to know it's even usable based upon the configurations in those applications where you have to reduce more than one trade size. And the last thing I want to talk about here this morning really isn't as much about transition as it is installation, but it still merits a quick review here. And here what we're talking about is the newly introduced and improved rod stripping tool. And the rod stripping tool is used to safely and efficiently strip coating from rocket rod or PVC coated all thread so that you expose just the right amount of all thread required for the installation. The product itself, the tool is aluminum. It's got a rounded body. It's lightweight, ergonomically designed, and has a knurled surface, makes it easy to hold and handle. It's got hardened steel stripping blades that provide long life and compatible cuts. And the biggest thing is it actually improves worker safety by eliminating the risk associated with trying to cut coatings with a box cutter or a knife. So where do you use it? It can be used with all types of all threaded coated rod, the rocket rod, food grade uh, rod, the PVC coated rod. Those are all common means of fastening and supporting. So, common uses, you're using them overhead and with trapeze mounting, with coated products like conduit and pipe hangers, beam clamps, strut, split ring hangers, or stainless steel or rocket rod support products. The tool actually allows you to prepare that for installation quickly and safely by removing the desired amount of coating in a clean, professional manner. And clearly the advantage is Now it makes the installation better. Certainly, personnel safety is a big one, but also it helps ensure reduction of cut risk, but then it also gets the cuts made in such a proper manner so that you have just the right amount of threads exposed, eliminating the risk of exposed threads, where again, like we've talked about a lot this morning, corrosion could occur. So that's the content for this morning. At this point, if there's any questions or comment, Josh would be happy to take those and we can discuss those a little further.
Yeah, we've got a few minutes here to take some questions. So like we said earlier, you can drop them in the comments if you have any questions. In the meantime, a question that we do get sometimes is, these are great innovations and, they work really well in these installations, but what can someone who maybe hasn't worked with PVC coated conduit very much in the past, how can they learn more about how these innovations work?
So great question, and you're right. It comes up a lot. So there, obviously we've got a really robust website that has lots of information on there. There's lots of videos, information about different products to show how they're used, and you look at that level of granularity. But probably one of the most popular things we have is we actually offer free of charge what's called installer certification. And installer certification is just that. It's designed specifically to help contractors be prepared on the nuances of PVC coated installation. And again, it's not intended to teach contractors to be contractors. The idea is for those people that maybe aren't quite as familiar or don't work with PVC coated all the time to understand what are some of the things to look for and how to ensure the best possible installation. Installer certification, as I mentioned, completely free of charge. We can do it remotely. We could do it just like we're doing this session this morning. We've had people come into our facility in Gilmer, Texas, in combination with a facility visit, and we also have people that will gladly go to the job site or office of the contractor if they're desired. One of the other things that's really important about that is it's actually a regulated program. So there is a certification card that's issued. Certification lasts for 2 years and it be renewed. So it's a great way to ensure that people are always aware of the newest products, the newest installation or code requirements, and make sure that people are up to date as far as methodology to ensure that you get the best possible installation.
All right. We have a question here from Gavin really quick. I know we're coming close to the end of our time together, but Gavin does ask, are these PVC coated parts more expensive than traditional parts?
As a general rule, when you talk about PVC coating, when we go back and we talked about why PVC coated products are selected for corrosive areas, in a general sense, as you go through and you look at a relative cost, PVC coated product will be more expensive than, say, just a regular galvanized product. And kind of a rule of thumb, if you look at it, if galvanized product was X, PVC coated product will typically be 5X. And if you look at stainless steel products, they could be 8 to 12X. So in that case, generally speaking, when people select and install PVC coated products, it's for a conscious decision where normalized galvanized products would not just perform and give the longevity. So typically speaking, we always say, nobody accidentally installs PVC coated products. They are designed and manufactured for a specific reason, and that is for performance in corrosive areas. So that's why we spend a lot of time talking about things like transitions, because it's really important if you're required in the area based upon the caustics present, that you need to spend 5 times what would normal material be in order to get the installation. It's really important you pay attention to the details so that you actually get the long life that you paid for and the value that you want to deliver to the customer.
Awesome. And Gavin did comment here. Thank you for the answer. Robert says, are these products currently available, the products we discussed today?
They are. So all the products that we talked about have been introduced to the market. They're readily available. Rockaway, as a general rule, prides itself on our ability to serve projects even with short cycle times. So most of these products, generally speaking, are available from finished good inventory. In some cases, for example, if you're looking at the larger size SpeedCouple, maybe a 5 or 6 inch SpeedCouple, They might be a little bit longer lead time. It may not necessarily be out of inventory. They may be a few weeks. But generally speaking, the answer is yes. Everything that we talked about this morning is currently available, and for the most part is readily available.
Excellent. We have a couple questions here about more information on the certification classes. I'll just go ahead and say that installer certification is easily accessible to sign up for, and the installer certification itself is free of charge. You can just go to the Plasti-Bond website, plastibond.com. You'll be able to find more information about the installer certification process there. Sign up to participate. We can do it in person at your job site. We can do it virtually over a virtual call like this. And it's typically a 60 to 90 minute presentation with a test that will follow. And then once that test is passed, you can get your certification card. So not a difficult process there. But yeah, you can just go to plastibond.com to find more information about that. But I wanted to wrap this up by thanking everyone for joining us today. I hope you all got some really useful information out of this. And thank you, Jack, as well, for participating and bringing so much great information to the table.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.